Okay, guys, we've got another day here where we're going to be going over some different things. What I'm looking forward to today is we're going to be talking about pricing strategies, how we're going to use them, what we're going to do with them. We all know it's a seller's market. That doesn't mean that you can price your home for any price in the world. So I'm going to share my screen real quick because I want you guys to see a little thing that I've got going on. Let me see if it comes on. Hold on a second. There's a little bit of a lag. I want to just make sure everything's going smoothly. Oh, there we go. All right, so what we're going to be doing is talking about some different pricing strategies and structures. So right now, we all know seller's market. Sellers can pretty much do whatever they want. No, absolutely not the case. There's still homes sitting on the market. Why? They're overpriced. That is an issue that we're having where people are sitting there saying, hey, I can price it for whatever I want, still be able to get it sold. We're seeing that time and time again not being the case. I will give an example on some of these different issues when we're going through and talking about this, about what can happen. So let's just go through it. This is like highest pricing strategies. Number one, start with your online home value estimate, but don't stop there. AVMs are fantastic. In El Paso, we have, in most places, we have RPR. RPR gives you a very good automated valuation model, or AVM, to give you a good idea of where the ballpark should be as far as what just the computer systems are saying your house is worth. That is not the answer. That is not our stopping point. That just gives us an idea of where we want to be, how we want to work it. Sometimes the computer has some wrong information. Sometimes bathrooms are wrong. Sometimes bedrooms are wrong. Sometimes they don't have any information in there at all. So you need to go in there and make some research and make sure you're highlighting the correct information about the property, how it's working. But definitely, starting off with the automated valuation model will definitely get you in the ballpark of where you want to be. But that's not where we stop. If that's all we did, if we stopped there, why are people hiring us? You need to go and do the deep dive research. What are the other comparables in the area? What are they selling for? What do they have and what do yours have? What are the difference in them to make this one worth more than that one? A huge thing that needs to be talked about. Set price based on comparable sales, not emotions. This is huge. This is a huge issue with sellers a lot of times because the sellers are looking at the home as what it is. They're looking at, this is the home I built. This is the home I raised my children in. This is where we celebrated different holidays. All that beautiful and amazing, for lack of a better word, emotional value doesn't transfer the new buyer. When you sit there and you're excited and you do sidewalk work and your kids put their handprints in the sidewalk, it's adorable and it's cute and you're happy. And the buyer's going to look at it and go, I'm going to want to cover that up with cement. That emotional things that you have tied up into that home, nobody else is going to have. And that's something as a real estate agent we need to worry about. We need to think about and find a very diplomatic way to explain, listen, I get your grandmother painted this house, this wall, but this wall doesn't look good anymore and we need to paint it, or we need to do this, or we need to do that. And do it in such a way as not to offend, but make sure they understand they're moving. They're leaving from this house, and whoever's going to buy it isn't going to want fairies on the wall or whatever you've got going in this situation. So emotion is a huge thing. Well, I think my home should be worth $400,000. Well, that's great, but comps in that area say it's worth $320,000, and you thinking it's worth $80,000 more doesn't make it so. So that's something we're going to see come across the table in a long situation. We recently picked up a home that was listed with another company, sat on the market for a little while. The entire time with the other company, we took it on. We got them to bring the price down a little bit, but it was still too high. We didn't get a lot of showings. We got an offer. It had a contingency, but it was the only offer we had. Sat for a while. The contingency backed out. It did not work. But when we decided, okay, the listing is expiring, let's take it off the market, let's start fresh, but at a realistic price. We put it back on at that realistic price. We had 6 offers in 24 hours and ended up bringing the final sales price above what we were looking at before. And that's the thing that we've got to remember. Just because we're starting at a lower price, and that's kind of one of the next strategies we're going to be going into, does not mean that's where we're stopping. And having that conversation with your sellers is extremely important. Saying, guys, we need to price this thing, especially in the market we're in currently, where we get a lot of people excited about a home, a lot of movement, and that might help us in a great deal. And I think that is actually what we're going to be talking about in the very next one, is setting price below competition, starting bidding war. It doesn't necessarily have to be below the competition. It just has to be in an area that makes sense, especially in the market we're in today. The problem is sellers think I can sell my house for whatever I want. And we're seeing sellers are pricing their homes to high end, and then buyers agents are even going higher than that to win the offer. And what happens more often than not is we've got a very angry seller when it does not appraise. We're putting, I'm the first one to agree with this, we put a lot of undue hardship on appraisers. And I'm not saying I'm any better because these homes aren't appraising, but we've got to be realistic. We've got to understand we are already topping out the end of the market as a listing agent, and then we're getting higher offers on the back end. It's going to happen. We've got to always keep that reason in our minds about what we have to do, how we have to do it, and how it's going to work. We've got to know where we stand, what we're doing, and we are more often than not in a situation where we're pricing ourselves higher than we can expect it to appraise. So we've got to understand that. But if you're going in, especially if the property needs work, especially if some things has to be done to the property, listing it a little bit lower will get some movement. Nothing makes someone want to write an offer more when you have back-to-back showings. So if someone's walking out saying, I like the home, but, and there's someone walking in, it really makes them thinking and think, oh man, I better put in an offer now. We've got to make sure what's going on. Having that knowledge about where we need to be is extremely important. Underpricing is a smart move if your home is older and needs upgrades or repairs. A good example, we just listed a home yesterday where 3 blocks down, it's listed, there's a house almost identical listed for $30,000 more. But that $30,000 more has been completely remodeled, has refrigerated air, has all the bells and whistles that need to be done on that property. We have not done those things in this property. So showing the value of, hey, you want it finished or you want it a little bit cheaper where you can do the work yourself. Understanding the difference is huge. You can't look at that and say, well, this one's selling for $185. Mine should sell for $185. It's not going to. It has not had the money put into it that the other one has. So asking a little bit less, giving it that opportunity where someone says, hey, I can do pretty much the same thing that one's done. Maybe it won't cost me the $30,000 difference and I'll be able to save some money. It's a huge opportunity in that regard of getting movement. And that being said, we've already had 7 showings today. So really hoping we get some offers on that very soon. In fact, I've had 2 people call me, say I'm sending you an offer. And while I'm on this high horse, I'm going to say this, guys. If you tell someone you're sending them an offer, try to send them an offer, or don't say you're sending an offer. I don't understand that. If I got an offer every time someone told me they're sending me an offer, my job would be a whole lot easier. So be thoughtful of that buyer's agents as well. Just because your client liked the house, don't just blurt out, we're sending you an offer. It may or may not happen. But something to think about on that strategy. If we're trying to get multiple people and multiple bids, just because we're going a little bit underpriced does not mean we're settling for that underpriced. Getting that motivation, especially in this current seller's market of, hey, I want to get it, but I know I need to give a little bit more. Just because we're starting a little bit lower does not mean that's where we're ending up. And I think that's a great opportunity to think about of how that will work. Adjust your price to account for online pricing benchmarks. We think about this a lot. There's some agents out there that love to use weird price indexes. As you can see, if you can see on my computer screen, 234, 775, 257, 717, 286, 137. Personally, I like to keep it simple, planned. In the numbers that make sense for us all. 350, 250, 150, whatever you want to do. But be careful if you go through, 257 or 286, and they could go up to 285. You're going to miss all those people who were very, very close on that range. So keeping it within the benchmarks is important. Think about where anything between the $25,000 and $50,000 benchmarks is kind of where you want to be about knowing how you want to play it. If you're at the higher or the lower of the two, it might be you might be cutting yourself off from a lot of those people that are going to be picking those things up. So that's just something to think about for that strategy there. Price your market home based on seasonal shifts in your market. This is huge. Summertime, when school gets out, when school's about to go back in, summertime, we see a lot of home movement. El Paso is a military town. So a lot of times when there's a large base realignment, a lot of different units will get orders at the same time. That means a lot of people are leaving and a lot of people are coming in. You'll see a lot more pickup in real estate in those military turnover timeframes, which is a huge opportunity as well to think about and understand seasonal shifts. When spring, the nice thing about the summer for moving is you don't have to worry about school. You don't have to worry about changing schools middle of the year. There's a lot more opportunity for doing it in that time. Now, does that mean no one buys or sells in November, December, January? Absolutely not. It happens all the time. But you usually get a little bit more buyers looking, which can turn into a little bit more money at the end if you do it at those seasonal timeframes. So it's just something to think about. That is a huge opportunity, and understanding, right now it's starting to get warmer. So if you've got a pool, you've got a huge advantage. If that pool looks nice and inviting when your client is showing this home, it's 80, 90, 100, 110 degrees in El Paso. I'm walking by a crystal clear pool. All I can imagine is I want to go swimming in that pool. I want to buy this house. Those are great times to do it, where in winter, it doesn't look as good. It's not as maintained. There's a cover on it. It's not going to be nearly as inviting and exciting to look at that pool when it's 45 degrees outside than when it's 110. So that having a pool is really going to help you in the summer months a lot more than in the winter months, as far as getting the buyer's imagination going and thinking about all the great things they can do with that pool when the time comes. Shooting for the moon. We see this all the time. We are the professionals for a reason. We're going to give you pricing strategies and ideas based on what the market can dictate and can allow. If your seller is saying, no, we got to go crazy high, you pretty much have two options that you want to do. You either say, you know what, I'm not in the business of listing homes, I'm in the business of selling them, because there's a huge cost if you do it right to listing a property. You got to put a sign in the yard, you're putting it in the MLS, you're having professional photos done, you're having all of these things done, doing an open house, whatever it is. That's time, energy, and money out of your pocket that you do not get reimbursed for until it sells. If we price this thing so crazy high that it's not even a realistic idea, you're just wasting your time. Unless you think you can get buyers out of it, why are we doing this? If they are going high, but you can have that conversation with them, like, listen, if you're going to do this, if we don't see any movement in the first 10 to 15 days, you're going to agree right now in the contract to commit to lower the sales price. Now, the problem I have with this approach, can it work? Yes, but you're losing all of the sweet time of having a new listing on the market the first 2 weeks by doing that strategy. So it's extremely important, in my opinion, price it right and it will sell quickly. And that's a huge opportunity of where we need to be. Get the price right and the rest will fall into place. As you see from the overview of the top house price strategy settings, a perfect asking price for your home is part art, science, or psychology, and 100% necessary for successful home sales. Understand how your home compares with the competition, aside from wonderful memories it holds. Work with a real estate agent who can be your objective set of eyes, and that's the most important thing, the objectivity. We look at our homes and we remember all the great things. Nick and I, anyone doesn't know, Nick, my brother, we both have the same story about our grandmother rented a house that we managed. She never bought it, she rented it. But after she moved out of there, we still had this weird emotional attachment to this house that we never owned, she never owned, but it was our grandma's house, and it made it kind of weird and hard for us to have the conversation. So even as real estate professionals, it's very easy to get emotionally attached to these properties. So imagine how hard it is for a seller who designed the home, built the home, planned the home, and has locked so many great memories with their family into this home. But those great memories don't transfer into economic increases in dollars when you're selling the property. It's something you got to think about, something you got to go with. And that's just a huge thing, is you don't want to price it too high at the beginning, because then we're always chasing the market and playing catch up. You start lowering it too much, you look desperate, they're going to get even lower offers. So it's one of those things we've got to be very careful where we try to price it right. Sometimes, guys, this is going to happen, and it happens all the time. It's happening to me on one of our listings now. You don't price it crazy high. For some reason, it's not moving as it should. There's no rhyme or reason to why. We've all seen that listing where you look at it, you say, that house is never going to sell. It gets an offer in a day. You got one that looks at it, it's like, man, this is priced right, looks great, it's going to be amazing, it's going to sell tomorrow, and it doesn't. There's a seat for every saddle, and making sure that right seat comes along for that saddle sometimes takes a little bit longer or requires that much more marketing to be done. But those are the issues that come into play. Do everything you can to make it as smooth as process, but make sure we're not overpricing at the beginning. And it's harder and harder to do in this market because the seller's market has lasted a very long time, especially in the state of Texas. El Paso, we're just now catching up to the rest of the state, but sellers are just seeing more and more and more return and are asking more and more dollars. And sooner or later, those dollars are going to start scaring people a little bit. And that's kind of one of those things that we have to deal with. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now so we can go on that. Stop screen share. Brian, are you on? Or I know you were on before. I don't know if you're on the call right now. I don't see him. Nope, he is. Any thoughts on this as well? I know you've definitely had one or two listing presentations where you've talked with sellers about pricing. I know you use a fantastic method where you're going through and actually using your adoption rates or what's the word I'm looking for? Absorption rate. When you're talking about those things, and I appreciate the fact you called me Dinah Kilgore for a while, and I have these back up. But what do you see as far as pricing goes as well when you're talking to sellers? You're muted if you're trying to talk.
Fair enough. All right. So the basis comes down to a couple different categories. The first being that you have to be responsible about your pricing strategy. But in the current environment, I would venture to say to be careful about falling on your own sword, right? You do have some expertise. We all do, but we've all seen it. We tell the person, hey, there's no way. And then a week later, list with somebody else and the contract's the house is under contract, right? We don't want to see that. We don't want to have you see that, especially in the current environment. So you have to remember that there's two sides of the equation. If that buyer, or excuse me, that seller does elect to try and push a higher price, then make sure you also operate what those buyers coming into that equation may be. Those are potential buyers for other properties or that one. You can generate people from a listing, right? So there's marketing sides of all equations. We just need to realize what marketing side we want to move forward with. So identifying those is key, and it is top of mind of how to price your strategy so it falls into the equation. So we use a heavy absorption rate. So absorption rate is the definition of supply and demand. Do we have enough buyers in the market today based on statistical average of the previous 12 months, or in this case, 2 or 3 months, to adjust for the fact that we will be able to sell the inventory that we currently have? If you operate with that absorption rate, and now using Flex MLS, Flex actually creates an absorption rate. Now, it doesn't drill it down to things like bed, bath, or square footage, but it will drill it down to neighborhood or zip code. So understanding where that absorption rate falls allows you to present it to the client and say, hey, listen, we are in a purely defined seller's market. But there's a difference, right? So 79938 right now is at 2.5 months of inventory, whereas 79934 right now is at 0.4 months of inventory. Now, which one is going to gain a premium? Which one's going to be more driving force to a premium? And the answer is the 0.4 months of inventory is probably going to push a higher price. Therefore, you can go a little more competitive with your pricing rate rather than going back to the strategy of just listing it where the value is telling us. Now, you're still going to gamble, right? And this is the seller conversation that you need to have, that you're going to gamble with the appraiser. And remember, guys, there's 3 different principles for appraisal. There's conventional, VA, and FHA. And they all have different standards, and they have different calibers of things that they can do. And appraisers are very questionable. And Angelo Amore came into our office one time and said, listen, I'm not going to get a bad grade if I can't justify the number. And that's what it is. It's a grading system. And they don't want to be bad grades if they price incorrectly. So remember, it's all in communication. And Andrew will attest to this every single time. Sellers get mad because of lack of communication. But that's not just by not following up with your client. That's by not sharing the knowledge that we're trying to give right now with your client at the listing consultation, a day after the listing consultation, and the preceding 10 days after that. You have to repeat everything, because we had a 20-minute class today. People will retain 10%. It's notorious. People will retain 10%. So asking yourself and asking the question of how do we keep that top of mind You have to constantly continue to tell the person the same thing, and stick to your story, stick to your guns. So yes, valuation, pricing strategy are ideal. Realtors screw up the market, guys. It's pure and simple. Me, Andrew, and every other realtor in the market are what screw up the market, because some realtors do just take the listing and they price the strategy way off a market. And that's actually what stalls a market. Pure market environment will actually always maintain the right price, right? Think of a loaf of bread at the store. If there's 100 loaves of bread at the store and there's only 10 people buying, only 10 people will buy, unless the other 90 loaves of bread are priced so good that Andrew can't leave the store without buying 4 packs of bread, right? But it has to be priced so good that he does that. And everybody else does that as well. So the market will always stabilize itself. It will either get rid of it by molding the bread, or it'll price it low enough that you'll buy 4 loaves of bread. That's just the way the market works. It's kind of like Furby, right? Furby used to sell for like $400, and now I think Furby's in the clearance rack. Why? Because nobody wants Furby today, and there's lots of them, right?
Yep. How many people spend their kids' college money on Beanie Babies? You never know what it's going to be, when it's going to work, and it's a great point. You know, I think every single agent is out there saying, like, I want to list at this. There's no way we can list for that price, and then it sells for that price. Like, well, it looks like I'm a moron. I don't know what I'm talking about today. It's going to happen. It can happen. Kent Bush, I saw you put in the comments that his area has a 2-day inventory. That is terrifying. That is the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. So that, you know, it is. The market is nuts, and they've had that market a whole lot longer than we have here in El Paso. And so just always remember, at the end of the day, I think sometimes for realtors, this is the hardest thing to remember. It's not our house. We have to always say, at the end of the day, it's up to our client. You know, when we're negotiating back and forth on option period and length and repairs and all these things, it's so easy. We're not doing that. That's not going to happen. That's not my decision. At the end of the day, I still got to take that to my client, make sure they know what's going on, and make sure they're the ones that say yes or no. Because if I say we're not doing that and the deal bombs, well, we would have given them an extra day. What are you doing? Ah, my bad. We all have to remember we are the bearers of information, and back and forth. We give the information to our client and then give it back to the other side. We do not make those calls. We do not make those decisions. And that is a hard thing for us to do a lot of the time when egos are on the line, you know, emotions are on the line, and people get that going on. Think about the price right now. It's a really hard thing to do. It's still got to stay somewhat realistic, but the absorption rate is a great way to realize, hey, can I push it a little bit more? Always going back to your clients and saying, guys, we'll most likely get this price, but we may not get the appraisal. And I will caveat that 1,000 times to my client. This, at the end of the day, I have a control over a lot of things. Appraisal is not one of them. I can't say what the appraisal is going to come in at, because when that thing does not appraise, when we've gone 80,000, 90,000 over asking price, we've got to be realistic about how are we going to handle this when it's all said and done. We're seeing more and more, and it's starting to happen more and more, where buyers are saying, I'll pay 10,000, 15, 20,000 over appraisal if it doesn't appraise. And that's how we're starting to battle those issues, but they're still going to be there, and we got to understand them. Brian, anything else you want to go over real quick?
No, I think that's a great class for next week, though, is talking about how to use and how to write up appropriately the conventional appraisal waiver form, right?
That's a good idea. That's
so a lot of people do it. Yeah, a lot of people do that incorrectly. In fact, I will be honest, I was actually writing it up correctly until I kind of looked at it and read it the right way. So making sure that if you're doing partial waivers, how you're participating in that partial waiver. So I think that would be a good kind of suggestion. And given an environment to where we're at today, you know, surprisingly, a lot of people that put conventional offers today are not using that appraisal waiver, because in the appraisal waiver at the bottom, it also has the same thing that the third-party financing does for FHA and for VA. It also gives an appraisal get-out-of-jail-free card at the bottom of that one too. So I think that'd be a good form to kind of address and talk about next week.
Great point, and actually great idea. So next week we'll be talking about that, and I'll have that form up, and I also have up the third-party form so you guys can see the difference between the two. So make sure you understand it. If it is conventional and you do not have that form, you are not protected if it does not appraise. So that's a great point and a great class. So we'll plan on that class for next week. Good point, Brian. And if you guys, in comments, if there's classes you want to have and want to go over and want to know about, please put them in the comments so we know, because trying to read everybody's mind about what issues people are having is a difficult process to do. But looking forward to that. Hope you guys learned something. Hope you got something out of it. We'll see you next week.